Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, January the 2nd, and this is effectively the second video I'm filming today. Yes. So for those of you that are new viewers, thank you for coming over and spending some time with me, and hopefully you will enjoy what you see. And for those of you who are returning viewers, I try to say this every week. I'm not sure do it every week, but for those of you who are returning viewers, thank you so much for coming back and spending some time with me. As always, if you have any comments, questions, topics you'd like me to address, feel free to put those in the comments down below, and I will be more than happy to address those. So this is my welcome to 2022. It's a new year, it's a new stitching year, for me, there's all new plans and goals and things to achieve and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to talk about, so I am filming this on Sunday, January the 2nd, but I have not done my stitching for today. But I will show you my new year, new starts for 2022. These two projects each have, you know, one day of stitching on them and not a huge amount of stitching done on them, but there is some stitching done on them. So let's just jump right in and talk about that right off the get-go. So as we talked about last year, for once in my lifetime, I am joining a stitch along, and I am hoping to actually keep up with the stitch along. Fingers crossed. We'll talk about that in a bit. And so I am joining the Sampler of Stitches Sal. The hashtag is SOS 2022 Sal. And I know I said I was going to put my picture of my stuff, and I've finally taken the picture because I was getting ready to start stitching. You need to take the picture. This is like ridiculous. We'll talk about that in a bit. So what is it? The Sampler of Stitches by the Drawn Thread, which is a series of 9 charts. I am planning, so you don't have to do them. This is putting all 9 charts together. You do not have to do them all as one chart on one piece of fabric, but that's what I'm choosing to do. The Stitch Along was started by Sarah Hughes of the Stitchin' Mommy. So if you haven't watched one of her videos, I highly encourage you to watch them. She does a wide variety of projects. She's got great variety and all that kind of stuff, and she's certainly a YouTuber, a Flosstuber that I watch regularly. So she came up with this idea, and really what the plan is that it's sort of picking up off of a challenge that was done in one of the Facebook groups last year about working on an alphabet related pattern, because if you finish each of these letters, all you had to do was finish one letter every 2 weeks, and by the end of the year you would have the whole thing completed. Which I went, that's a brilliant idea, why haven't I thought of that? And so she took that and she said, I have this series of charts in my stash, and that's what I'm planning on doing. Anybody want to do it with me? And I went, me. So this is what it's going to look like with all 4 charts. The Sal was starting, of course, yesterday on New Year's Day as a New Year, new start. And since I had added this to my plan, I went ahead and I stitched a little bit. You would think, having done this, that I would have all my props ready, but I don't. Okay, so here is my little start on Sampler of Stitches. So as we talked about as I talked about in the previous video, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to set a goal for myself every week on the things that I'm stitching and what that's going to look like. And so last week, so don't forget January 1st was a Saturday, which as far as I was concerned was last week. This is Sunday, the beginning of another week. So last week my goal for this was my goal was really just to get this A started. But of course, once I got in there, the color, I had a little bit, so this is the light blue and the dark blue, and these are used in this specialty stitch over here. I'm actually just going to stop and pull out. I'm not going to pull it out because it's over in the other room by the stitching chair. So you can have a closer look up of the A, but I don't have it with me. It's over there. Anyway, so I am doing this on a 32 count Pearl Grey Lugana. I will say the way that it's showing up on camera, I feel like it's showing up a little darker than it is in real life. Not terribly darker, but just a little bit darker. And I've changed the colors on this. So the blue that I am using is Soie d'Alger. The dark blue is 1436 and the light blue is 1714. And so that's what I'm using for my blues. And again, my goal was to get the A, but because I had them left over, I looked at the chart and went, is it used anywhere else in the A? And so the really great thing is the exact amount that I had left was enough to do the specialty stitch here. And what my plan is when we talk about the sampler of stitches, I'm going to have a little segment each week where I talk about the specialty stitches that I have worked in the sampler of stitches and how they are. So we will come back to this in just a minute. So I got my start on January 1st. I have, as I said, I've not done my stitching for today, Sunday, January the 2nd. And my goal for this, and again, so in my last video, which who knows if anybody's had time to look at that one, is my goal for this is that I am going to spend every Sunday working on sampler of stitches. That is, so, and hopefully over the course of 2 Sundays, that should give me enough time to keep up with getting 1 letter done every week, or 1 letter done every 2 weeks. So I have, so really all I have to do is do that much between today and the end of next Sunday. So again, my goal is we're going to get back to more regular floss tubes, barring unforeseen circumstances, and we will, so you'll be seeing, next week I'll show you what I accomplished tonight on this one, etc., etc. See how we're doing on my goal. So that is my goal for this particular piece. I want to keep up with it, if not keeping ahead. I'm going to devote my Sundays only to all of my stitching on, well, that's, I say that now and even I'm going, that doesn't sound right. I'm going to make sure I spend enough time on a Sunday that I am keeping up with this particular stitch along, if not getting a little bit ahead. I will not be averse to, if I finish it earlier than the end of the year, so be it. I'm trying not to set myself up for failure by saying I will finish it up earlier, but hopefully I will be able to keep up with this, no problem. And again, based on what I was looking at yesterday when I was looking at the chart, I'm going to have no problem doing that. Now, the funny thing, so I have changed all of the colors. I will be changing, not all of the colors, most of the colors. The taupe, I think, is staying. And I have pulled more colors than what is called for. Hopefully tonight I will also be finally at long last uploading my pictures. So I have got a picture of my start for my January 1st. The first picture that I'm going to put up is just the fabric with my Soie d'Alger on it. It does not have the yellows on it yet because I am still dithering about the yellows. I know, hard to believe, but it's true. Now, I don't have long to dither because it's, of course, being used in A. I need one of the yellows already for A. So I'm going to have to pull the pin one way or another, either tonight or next week. We'll see how that goes. So I've got a couple of options in here, and I may, over the course of the series, I may use more colors than what they called for. So you'll see, for example, I've got four colors of mauve. The charts only call for 3, and they would probably be most equivalent to these 3. I haven't quite decided. They will be showing up in the next specialty stitch that I do, and so I will have to decide whether I'm going to do this combination or this combination. So that's my call for tonight. The other thing that I have left to decide is my soie perlée, and we talked about that when I was originally showing these as my sort of first, where I think I was heading. And so I still have the 2 colors of soie perlée. One is a darker, one is a lighter. The soie perlée is used in this A. So again, I will have to make a decision. I'm looking at the diagram going, probably tonight I will make that decision on my soie perlée. Now, it doesn't mean, again, that over the course of this entire design, I'm actually happy that I've got 2, because it does give me that optionality that I could change it, and that whereas they only used 1, I may end up using 2. I mean, I'm changing most of the other colors. Why not add more colors that they didn't have? Who knows? So I do expect that tonight I will be making a decision, certainly for where the soie perlée is used for the letter A, that's going to get made tonight. My voice seems to be drying out, so I may have to take another. So those are there as well. And it was interesting when I started looking at it yesterday, sort of say, I was looking at saying like, okay, this first one's not too bad. I got an email from one of the newsletters that I get regularly, and it was talking about setting crafting resolutions for 2022. And I went, oh, don't you worry about that. I have crafting resolutions. I have goals, and I have plans, and I've, as you all know, I've mapped out a 2022 stitching plan. So I was kind of laughed, because a lot of the things that were on there I have built into my plan for this year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the topic at the end, which is my plans for 2022. But so that is one of my New Year new starts. So I went very successful. I started it on the day. I accomplished my goal. And again, so tonight my plan is to continue working on this, and then it's going to go away till next Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see how much I get done tonight and how much I have left to do. Again, I was looking at the chart, and I went, this is totally manageable. But my goal is every Sunday, it's going to be Sunday Sampler of Stitches stitching. Say that 12 times. Anyway, so there's that one. Now, before I decided I was going to join the SAL, I, of course, already had been working on my 2022 stitching plan. And so I already had a New Year, New Start planned. And take it out of the bag. This is my New Year, New Start. From Country Cottage Needleworks, this is their January Cottage. Now, the called for fabric for this is 28 count lamb's wool linen from Wichelt. I am doing mine on a, where is that piece of board? Well, it's in my lap. I am doing mine on a 32 count Icelandic blue linen from Wichelt. So that is my start from yesterday on my house. As always, I was didn't quite get as much stitching done yesterday as I'd planned, so so today, Sunday, will be a sampler of stitches, and then tomorrow this is going to come out. Now, why did I choose this? Well, a couple of reasons. One, if you've watched the previous video, which will have only recently have come out as well, my year in review, one of the things that I had noted in my stitching plan for last year is that I had started a lot of fairly large projects that were not going to get wrapped up quickly. And I had very few small ones. And even the Mill Hill one that I did was full coverage, and it took me longer than expected because I was, anyway, whatever. Song, dance, saga, whatever. So one of the things that I have built into my plan for 2022 are some smaller projects that, as far as I'm concerned, will get finished more quickly. So I can have a few more finishes and feel like I've accomplished something. I have a couple of finishing plans for 2022, so I'm not sure, that this is necessarily on that plan, but like for fully finished. But this is one where I go, I feel quite confident that I can finish this in a reasonable amount of time. Now, I say that now, check back over the next couple of weeks and see how I do. So this is a chart that is 77 stitches wide by 77 stitches high. So this is going to end up being about, just under 5 inches by 5 inches square. I am using it on my 6-inch Q-snap. And the other thing about this is, yes, it's small, but it is also not full coverage, right? So the house is the biggest task there, and I've already started working on that. The other interesting thing about this particular chart is that it's predominantly DMC. And I, as a stitcher, appreciate that it is predominantly DMC. Again, this is not a very large chart. So there are two hand-dyed fibers that are used for this. There's one that is used for the roof, and there's one that's used, it's Weeks Dye Works Cocoa, which is used like for the base of the tree and this branch at the bottom and the top. Now, even then, I don't know that I'm going to use cocoa for those parts. I'm not convinced that the variegation in cocoa is worth it. The other interesting thing, as I was stitching yesterday, so here's my floss ring for that one. This is the called for over-dyed fiber for the roof. And it was interesting because as I was stitching last night, I was looking at it going, that looks different than the picture. So it's Pebble Beach, and again, this is not a terribly variegated thread. Now, this is the one that I had pulled out and I had put into the bag, because when I was pulling it, you've met me, I just went and I pulled the thread, and I hadn't pulled out the chart to see exactly where it was being used. That was last night's extravaganza. So now that I've pulled out the chart and I've seen what it is, it's not bad. I have to think about it. Originally, I was going to start with the roof, and because I went, I'm not 100% convinced that this is what I want my roof to look like, I moved straight onto the house. So one of my tasks for today is to go back into my stash, look at the Pebble Beach, see if I have any more Pebble Beach in my stash, and see what color that looks like. On the chart, it does have a DMC alternative, and the DMC alternative is $37.90. And so last night, because my handy dandy DMC color card was right by my chair, I hauled it out and I looked at it and I went, wow, $37.90 and my Pebble Beach are not close, which is particularly why it had me rethinking it. So I'm rethinking that. I'm going to have to make a decision tomorrow when I'm starting on what I'm going to do about that tomorrow, the next day, whatever. But it was interesting because I had it and I went, I'm already going, I don't think I'm going to use the cocoa for the branches. And already my one overdyed that I pulled out for January, that might be changing to the DMC equivalent anyway. So it's interesting. It's not horrible. There you go. It's just, it's not, I don't know. I'm struggling going, I don't know that I like that combination of, I'm okay with the turquoise house. I'm just not sure that I like that for the roof. The other thing of note is, you know, not surprisingly, it's the January Cottage. There's quite a bit of white on there. So when I was originally looking at this, and because lamb's wool is, I'm not going to use that because for me that is too brown. So the other, you know, I had looked at at several other versions of a light blue and all that kind of stuff when I was coming up with this choice. Now again, I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. Not great. That's not bad. Right, so there is the white against the Icelandic blue. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's going to show up just fine. It's going to be the snow at the bottom of the house, it's going to be the snowman, and it's going to be the snowflakes. So I am happy with how the white looks on this particular one. I'm also having the debate before I get into the white, whether or not for this particular chart, because the white is being used essentially for the snowflakes, the snowman, the snow on the top, you know, snow, 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 snow. I may haul out the DMC Étoile version of white and use that on this particular chart. So check back next week and see if I've kept it as the flat DMC or if I've pulled out the DMC Étoile. It's things that I'm thinking about. So one of the other reasons why I chose this one to be my New Year, New Start. So one, small chart, easy finish, as far as I'm concerned, a relatively simple way to you know, I could start something and finish it in a reasonable amount of time, which I would say that would start my year off well. Finish early on. That would be a great way to start while I'm doing my other things. So that would be great. The other thing about this is you've watched me buy charts over the last number of months and you go, I have a problem with houses. I am incredibly drawn to a chart that has a house on it. I have not stitched a lot of those charts. I'm really good about acquiring the charts, and as we all know, I acquire the charts and then I don't stitch them for anywhere from 5 to 25 years. Anyway, so part of this was I was going to sit down and sort of say, stitch the dumb house. Stitch a chart with a house and get on with it, and make sure that you're actually okay stitching charts with houses, because you seem to acquire a lot of them, so you should really buck up and stitch some of them. So far, I am happy with stitching my house. It's actually been a very pleasurable stitch so far. I'm okay with stitching my house. It's coming along not badly. Again, already thinking about changing the colors. So I've made it, congratulations, one day into the new year before I'm already going, you might need to change that color. So that's my other New Year, New Start. And again, as I mentioned in my previous video, one of the things I've discovered is that I hate starting a project. I hate starting a project. It's actually surprisingly hard for me to do that. And I don't know why that is. So It took me quite a while before I actually started the sampler stitches because I'm also neurotic, and it's a self-imposed issue about my stitching needs to be square on the piece of fabric. Now, when I cut the fabric for sampler stitches, I think I got it accurate. You know, I measured it out, but, you know, I was measuring it again as I was getting ready to start it yesterday. I went, it's maybe a little bit bigger, like, so maybe half an inch bigger on the sides than the, you know, the called for when I do the calculations, which then, of course, threw me into the whole thing going, well, it needs to be centered. So then I had to, on this one, for sampler stitches, because you really do need to start in the top left the way we're doing it. I needed to get my way, find my way over here. So that took me a while, and I found that annoying because I do tend to be a center stitcher and working out. I don't tend to often be a top left starter. So anyway, so I did all that, got it ready, finally got it started, went, okay, we are now off to the races. And quite frankly, once I get the first couple of hours into a thing, then I'm totally fine. It's that first little bit I'm not fond of. It's weird, but anyway. So far this year, on top of the WIPs that I'm carrying forward from both 2021, 2020, and the ones that I have in my WIP pile from prior to me starting a Flosstube channel that you haven't ever seen. And who knows if they'll make an appearance in 2022. You'll have to stay tuned to find out. Anyway, so that was my new start, my 2 new starts. I got them started on New Year's Eve 2. For those of you who were doing the 12 by 12 with Pam from Just Keep Stitching and Kia B, they were doing their 12 new starts between starting it at noon on the 31st. I hope you had a good time with that. I looked at that and went, that sounds like agony to me. 12 new starts. It would make things okay in 20 once you got past the starting it, but 12 in a row, that didn't sound like fun to me at all. The other interesting thing, which is not part of my thought process for 2022, but I also was watching someone who had sort of said part of their reason for doing the 12 starts leading into New Year's Day was that they were going to do 12 starts, and then each of those 12 starts was going to be a focus piece for one of the months of 2022. And I went, well, that's a really great concept too. Unfortunately, when you do things like that, I already have my 2022 plan, and so it didn't really work in with mine because I have a 5-year plan. So it sounds like an interesting plan for me to do maybe in 2026 or 2027. So far, it's not fitting into my current 5-year plan. But so those are my new starts. A bigger one that is going to take a decent amount of time over the course of the year, all done in manageable chunks. I view the sampler stitches as my 2022 attempt at daily 30. So I'm not stitching on it every day, but it's a project that only comes out for a very specific amount of time and gets put away. So there's that. Okay. Let's do the sampler of stitches section of the videos. So as I said a few minutes ago, my plan is that every week I'm going to do a little section on the specialty stitches that I have worked on in the sampler of stitches. So this week is pretty easy, with my 1 day of stitching. And quite frankly, it factored into why I was so grateful that my thread actually continued enough, is that I actually have done the specialty stitch here. And so the name of what they've called this specialty stitch is the arrowhead stitch. Now, there's sort of 4 rows of them in 2 different colors, the dark blue and the light blue. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a very, very easy stitch. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not even sure that I would necessarily call it a specialty stitch, because as far as I'm concerned, it's practically just like back stitching. So it was very, very simple to do, took no time at all, easy peasy. You know, so notes for anybody out there, if you ever run across a pattern and it says you need to do the arrowhead stitch, don't worry about it, easy. So next week, in next week's video, we will be talking about the specialty stitches that I do between, I do tonight on this particular section. So the A and its border and the design inside, that of course is all just regular cross stitch. Those aren't specialty stitches. I'm also planning on keeping track of how many specialty stitches are being done. I read somewhere that someone made a comment that there are 144 specialty stitches done over the course of these 9 charts. So I was gonna keep track and see if it really is 144. If and report the percentage. I haven't done the percentage, but so far 1 out of 144, which is a really small number. So check back next week and hopefully we can get a little more of that. Anyway, so that's the sampler of stitches. Let's talk about haul. So technically, so there's a couple of things that have happened. One of the things that I talked about last year was that I had ordered something online from Russia. It has arrived. So I am planning on doing an unboxing of that. It's going to be a couple of weeks before that one comes up. So I did order it. It has arrived. I, of course, did a quick look just to make sure that everything that I thought was in there was going to be in there and that I was happy with everything, because better to let them know if there's an issue once you receive it as opposed to waiting several weeks. So I did all of that and I'm very happy with it. Very happy with it. But that will be a topic for another Flosstube in a couple of weeks. But that has arrived. The other thing, so for my personal acquisitions, technically nothing new on that front. I did, however, get a Christmas gift for my parents, which is a digital subscription to Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. So I have not printed anything out, partly because my printer's having a little bit of a conniption, but they shopped off of my list and got me the digital subscription. So for Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine, you've got a couple of options. If you are in the US, you can order the paper magazine directly from them. I'm sure that there are shops in the US who you can also order the magazine from as well. I haven't checked into any of that. As someone who lives outside of the US, from a subscription perspective, I cannot get a paper subscription from Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. I would have to get it through my LNS. So Traditional Stitches does bring in the Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine regularly, all the time. So you do have the option on the Traditional Stitches website. I think there's one where it's an auto ship. So if you're willing to buy every magazine, you can sign up for the auto ship. I'll check on that. If there's a link specific to that, I'll put it in the notes below. I, however, am not that person. I need to see the magazine. I need to see what's in it. So there are lots of Flosstubers out there who really enjoy the Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. And I have seen it on many occasions. And it's not one of my favorite magazines because, so half the magazine is Punch Needle, which I don't do. I've never tried it. I don't do it because I don't like how it looks. Like I don't like the look of the end product of a Punch Needle project. So I don't do it. I haven't learned how to do it. And so for me right there, half the magazine goes out the window, right? Not interested in those patterns. I'm never going to be doing it, etc., etc. Off we go. So then you're left with half the magazine, which may or may not have something. And the name of the magazine is Punch, Needle, and Primitive Stitcher. So prim style stitching or primitive stitching patterns aren't necessarily my cup of tea. I don't do a lot of it. But the interesting thing is, I will say that even though there will be some that I would view as being prim patterns, it's not all prim patterns. But it's also a magazine where I look at it and going, there might be one, maybe one chart per magazine that appeals to me. And so that's where I have a little bit of a harder time when I look at that one compared to a Stony Creek one, where I go, there's usually several things in the Stony Creek magazine that I like. Doesn't mean I necessarily stitch them any faster, but I at least, you know, sort of go like, like the one that I showed in the last video where I went, like there's 3 ornaments right there, plus part 4 of the band sampler, plus there was another one elsewhere. So I look at that magazine and I go like, there's, 5 or 6 patterns in here that I really like, which is why I get that magazine. I don't stitch them any faster, but I like them. And so that's always been a struggle for me for that particular magazine, where it's go like periodically there's one. One of the really great things about the Punch, Needle, and Primitive Stitcher magazine is that Vonna Pfeiffer, the amazing Vonna Pfeiffer, the Twisted Stitcher, in the magazine has these finishing articles. So she walks you through a specific finish. She gives you very detailed instructions. She gives you pictures as she's doing the steps. And I appreciate that. And so for me, the benefit of the digital subscription, so my parents have gotten, so again, I'm outside of the US. Directly from Punch, Needle, and Primitive Stitcher magazine, I can only get a digital subscription. Now, my parents got me the extra, the all-inclusive digital subscription for 2022, because the all-inclusive subscription includes all of the back catalog, which is great. So I'm like, so for 1 year, yay, for the subscription, I can go through all of the issues all the way back to 2015 and get all of the patterns and the stitching the finishing tutorials from Vonna and anything else that's in there. I've got all access for all of the magazines from 2015 right through to the end of 2022. And that, to me, was a really great option. And I had this conversation with my parents because she made a comment and she said, what happens if she didn't know how to get it and she couldn't make it work? And I said, well, one way or another, I am getting this subscription. So whether you give it to me as a gift or whether I get it my own, I will be, one way or another, I'm ending the year with the subscription. So they gave it to me as a Christmas present, which was really great. So I appreciated that. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for that. I will thoroughly enjoy it. And so it's actually one of my goals for this week is to spend some time getting started on that. I've already got my email that says, welcome to your subscription and here's your password and all that kind of stuff. So I'm ready to go. I've got it. I haven't been on the site yet, but I have it ready to go, and I can start looking at all the back catalog for that particular magazine and starting to pull those down. So again, what I'm expecting to do is that as I'm starting to pull them down, I will show them to you, hopefully, assuming the printer gets fixed or can be repaired or whatever its little issue is, pull those down and you'll see what I'm pulling out of the Punch, Needle, and Primitive Stitcher magazine. So that's great. So those are my acquisitions for sort of between Christmas and New Year's. I still have one package that has not yet been shipped, but I knew that when I put the order in. So at some point in January, that should be arriving. All right. Now, let's talk. So we're now officially into the talk. Let's talk about my 2022 plans. So, as you all know, or if you are not a regular viewer, I have a 5-year stitching plan. I started my 5-year stitching plan last year in 2021, and if you look at the previous Flosstube 88, I talk about my year in review. And I loved having the plan. So really enjoyed doing the plan, did my 5-year plan yesterday or last year, and then spent sort of the back half of 2021 kitting up my 2022 with some adjustments. Again, my stitch along that I'm going to be participating on. Anyway, so I thought I would show you, I won't go through everything that's in the plan because the plan is always subject to change. But I thought I would show you, because in the previous video you saw where I'm keeping the other ones. So this is my 2022 basket with the projects that I have kitted up for 2022. These ones here on the side are not new projects. So these are some of the holdovers from 2020 that I did not show in my 2021 WIP parade because I didn't work on them in 2021. But they are in here. So they are things, for example, remember this one? This is from Little Leaf Designs Butterfly Square. And I actually, so this was a 2020 project. But my plan, so the buttons need to go on here, but the plan was that I was going to do a second one so that I could do a pillow where both sides were exactly the same. I, of course, have not worked on that since I came up with that grandiose plan in 2020. There's also Choose Joy from My Big Toe. This was part of my 2020 Mania plans because I was doing a Mirabilia Mania and then spending some time on the weekends on starting a new project. There's not a lot done on that one. There's also from Shepherd's Bush, Summer Notes, which I got stymied because of the lake color, but I think I've finally made a decision on that one, so that one's ready to go. And in here, this is not a whip, it's a whisk. This is where I'm keeping the two hands-on design charts with my Take Whisks and Lick the Bowl, because of course I'm planning on putting them in a shadow box using these mini kitchen utensils that I got from Winners. So the interesting thing on this front is I got a notification. So I'm waiting to start these until I have the shadow boxes for them so that my plan will come together. If I can't find shadow boxes that work for these the way I want, I'll have to come up with another plan. So I'm just sort of holding off starting these. And the shadow box that I'm aiming for are from IKEA. And IKEA, like everybody else, is having supply chain issues. So I got a notification from IKEA last week that they had received the shadow boxes. They'd gotten some in, they were in stock. I have learned from IKEA that there's no point in me driving over there without checking online again. Even though they send you the notification that says, we have these in stock. I've done it once before where they said they had them in stock. I dutifully went over, so I think I got the notification like late in the afternoon, and I went over the next day, during the day, in the morning, went to IKEA, and they had none. So I've learned that you can't necessarily count on those. And so I dutifully went back onto the website, looked the product up, and it says, congratulations, there are 3. And at that point, that's where I go, there's usually a really good chance that by the time I get over there, that the 3 will not be there. So I have checked again the following day. They, of course, were out of stock yet again. I've signed up yet again to get notifications so that the next time they arrive, it comes in. I'll tell you another IKEA story at the end of this, but anyway. So that's in there as well, because I really want to start this project, but I can't start it until I get those shadow boxes and make sure that my plan is all going to come to fruition, because I love those mini utensils. And I'm going to have to buy several of them for, anyway, all sorts of things. So anyway, waiting for the shadow boxes to arrive, and then we can do something on that front. But that's where I keep them all. They are kitted up. I think mostly all kitted up. There's a couple in there that I've looked and went, you might want to check and see you've got everything in there, but I think it's all kitted up, ready to go, labeled in their bags. Again. Yes, I don't have the fancy pretty fabric ones, because I don't have a lot of them, and I'm not a really good sewer, and 12 other things. I'm gonna see if I can't snooker my mother, who is a quilter and has a large fabric stash. One of my goals for January is to take her one of the fabric ones I do have and go, could we make any of these out of the fabric you have in your stash and see what happens. Anyway, so here's all my stuff for what I've got kitted up and labeled and all those things. I have, of course, a piece of paper that I have ready to go that sort of explains my plan. And the interesting thing about the plan for this year is by the end of January, I will be able to see whether my plan is actually coming to fruition or not. So it is, I have a plan worked out in my head, but the things that you work out in your head don't necessarily work out in real life. So by the end of January, I will be able to tell whether my plan needs to be adjusted, which could have ramifications for all sorts of things. But January is my test month of my new plan. And so some of the things that my plan incorporates are the following. One, I have a large number of WIPs that I'm carrying. Okay, large for me, not large for other people, but large for me, a large number of WIPs that I'm carrying over from last year. And I really want to make sure that they don't go into the forgotten abouts. Right, so those 2020 WIPs that I just showed you, that's an example of where I started the WIPs. I haven't finished things, and they have not been worked on for over a year, right? Because they didn't get worked on in 2021. So one of the things that I want to do is, now that I've got this great start on these projects that have been languishing and are finally started, and yay, is I want to make sure that they don't languish anymore. I want them to continue to be worked on. I also don't want to prevent myself from starting new things. Hence, 2 new starts on January 1st. New year, new starts. I'm participating in a sale. So I want to have new things as well. Again, part of this is the lesson from the Marbeck Nativity, where I think I was getting dragged down going, it's the same project, it's the same project, it's a big project, it's the same project, it's never going to end, hence the never-ending Nativity, but it finally got finished. So one of the things I learned from that is it would benefit me to alternate and some kind of a rotation. But as we all know, I do not have a great rotation. I'm not really great at a rotation. So one of the things that a couple of things that are factoring into the rotation. First of all, I've got my Sunday set aside to work on my sampler of stitches. So it's going to stay on its scroll rods. It's going to be ready to go, but I'm only planning on working on that 1 day a week, period. My Sundays are sampler of stitches. The other thing that I am setting up, and that's also part of tomorrow's activities, is I have the luxury of having the ability to have 2 stitching spots. So normally you've seen me in the sunroom, and that's one of my stitching spots, and I have another stitching spot inside the house, I call it inside from the sunroom. Sunroom is sort of outside because it has the big swings in temperature. So again, over the winter, it's been really, really cold here, bitterly cold. So the sunroom has been unbelievably unpleasant. There's no way you would get, not even for filming. Yeah, no, it's too cold in there. But what I am planning is I've brought in the stuff that is normally by my stitching spot in the sunroom, and I brought it into the house. And I am specifically setting up 2 stitching areas so that I'm going to have 2 projects where it will be easy for me to, you know, stitch in either spot. And that's going to factor into my rotation about what I'm doing. And so one of them is going to be set up with new things that I'm starting and that I'm working on. So for example, you know, this, sorry, I just cannot, there we go. You know, my New Year, New Start from Cottage, Country Cottage Needleworks is going to be at one of my spots. And the other spot is going to be a whip, a carryover whip. And so what I'm going to work on is I'm going to set myself a goal for my new project. And once I accomplish that goal, I then set a goal for myself for a carryover whip. And then I work on that carryover whip until that goal is accomplished. So it's not a specific set of days or hours or stitches or something like, well, who knows what I'm said. But my goal is that I'm going to set a very specific goal for the new project. And once I reach that goal, then I'm going to work on a carryover whip. I set a goal for that whip. And once I reach that goal, I go back to, you know, either, again, so I'm not sure that this is going to, you know, go on for forever, but that's where you go. And then work on something new, set a goal, finish the new goal, go back to a whip, set a goal, finish the whip goal. So that is my plan. That's my approach for how I think I'm going to structure how I'm planning on structuring 2022, so that I am getting some new things in there, but I also know that I am making progress on some of the existing whips. Now, they're not going to be things like, let's pick on, you know, the work of Christmas from my big toe from last year. So when that comes up, when I choose to put that as a whip goal, the whip goal will not be finish the work of Christmas. It will be, you know, something within that chart where I go, like, that's a reasonable goal where you go, like, you made some progress on that, work on that, and that's enough. So I'm not planning, generally, I'm looking at my things going, I'm generally not planning on sort of going, like, finish the whole thing on those larger ones. You know, my big toe, the Mirabilia, the Stony Creek one, like those aren't going to be the sizes of goals because those are just going to be too big. It's going to take too long. Generally, I'm aiming for goals where you sort of go, it shouldn't take you more than a week to accomplish that goal. So one, it will bring more variety into what I'm doing. You know, because of course I always have my infamous, you know, my temperature tree needs to get worked on as well. So again, so that's how I'm planning on setting them up, that I will have a station where I go, like, this is your new one, and then this is your whip one. And again, I totally acknowledge that it is a luxury that most people don't have, that I have freedom of reign enough in my family room that I can set up 2 stitching spots and get that set up. And I am. It's something that I'm very grateful, and it will be, for me, as I say, it will be very fascinating because I'm test driving this approach for the month of January, and by the end of January, I'll know whether it's working or not. And at that point, either I will continue with that approach or I will revamp the approach, and I'll come up with another option as to how I'm doing my rotations. But I want to make sure that I do get to do some new things and start some new projects, but I really very much want to make sure that the whips that I'm carrying over that I have worked on in 2020 and 2021, that those are actually making progress, that they don't end up sort of being just a basket of WIPs that stay and stay and stay. They've got to get work done. So again, so that's part of how I've set up my plan for 2022. You know, again, it's bringing forward some of the learnings from last year that, you know, I seemed to do better when I said, this is your stitching goal for this project. And once you've done that, you know, reach your goal on that project and then pick up a different project. So I know that there are stitchers out there who they do daily rotations, and that's too far for me where I go, I can't work on a new project every day. Like that's it. I wouldn't see enough over the course of that one day of stitching for me to feel like I had actually accomplished something, which is why I'm setting sort of saying it's goal-based stitching. Sort of, this is the goal for this project. When you reach that goal, then you go work on a WIP. So alternating between new projects that are not being carried over, and ones that are being carried over from last year. The other thing, as you can see from my New Year, New Start, is that a lot of the projects last year were big ones. And I like that they're started, but they're also not going to turn over very fast. And so I want to bring some smaller projects in that I can get accomplished. So, you know, this clearly is a much smaller one. You know, clearly getting my 2021 temperature tree finished is on that plan. But again, you know, the same way I approached it last year, I can see me doing a branch, right? The goal would be get the branch done, is maybe, you know, the goal for that pattern for 1 week, or maybe it's the branch plus all the leaves for that month. Who knows what the goal is going to be? It depends on, you know, it depends on when I get there. You know, what that looks like. So that is my approach about how I've come together with my plan. Again, I didn't want to commit to a year where I didn't have any new starts and just, you know, do rotations on the WIPs. I don't like that either. So there are, well, clearly, as you can see from the basket, there's a bunch of new starts that are planned in there. So it will be fun when those come up. But really, that is my approach to how I'm doing it. It'll check back at the end of January. I'm doing math in my head. Yeah, it'll be really close to the end. So probably the last Flosstube in January. I'll be doing a recap and see how my plan is doing and whether I'm revamping it or not. So it was fun putting that together. I've actually got some months where I've actually very specifically put in some things where I think exactly how it's going to work by week and all that kind of stuff. Again, it's a plan. Everything could change. You know, January is my test drive. We'll see how it goes. But I'm actually really looking for it because I think it's going to give me enough of a rotation that I feel like I am rotating projects, that I'm not going to get bored with them. I'm hoping that my plan has done enough of a combination of big projects, which are going to take a longer time to finish. Memorabilia, my big toe, ink circles, all of those are, you know, those are going to take a longer time to get accomplished, to get them finished. But work on them and, but start some new things, work on a WIP, alternate the WIPs. I'm hoping that's going to solve a little bit of my rotation issue. It's going to bring in my goal-based stitching, and we'll see how it works out. So that's how I've structured my plan. I'm just looking around here and going, okay, so that's my plan. Let's talk about some other stitch-alongs that are starting that you may be interested in. Now, the Victoria Sampler Facebook group, they did a stitch-along over the course of 2021. If you did not download the charts, these are now gone. You can't get them. But this was their concept. They did a chart by month, etc., etc. I, of course, have downloaded them all. This is not part of my 2022 stitching plan. But Stitchin' Mommy, Sarah Hughes, from her, I think, her last one or the one 2 ago, I might be behind on that one. She had pulled this out and she was going to try to work this into her rotation in 2022. So I will be again, if you're not watching her, you really should watch her. She's got a great series of projects that she's working on. And the other great thing from the Facebook group is that you watch how people personalize them. They took whatever the chart was and added things and did things differently, and it was great. And so I have downloaded all of those charts. Now, the interesting thing to me is that because Victoria Sampler is semi-retired, I wasn't expecting them to do anything in 2022, but they did put a post in the Facebook group. So I will put a link to the Facebook group that says that she was planning on doing free chart. There was another stitch along for 2022 that she was planning on putting into the Facebook group. But I sat there, I was reading, going like, I thought we were done. I thought there was this whole, like, this is the last of, you know, the big series and all that kind of stuff. But apparently it's happening in 2022. So I will put the link to the Facebook group in there as well. Also, Fox and Rabbit. So Fox and Rabbit, who they have charts. Fox and Rabbit of the fabric dyeing business from Australia. They also have a shop in Australia called Linens and Threads. And Linens and Threads over the past number of years, I want to say maybe 2016 maybe, they've been doing year-long stitch-alongs that are absolutely free. Absolutely free. And again, this is an example of get the free chart while you can. So I think it's the 2017 and the 2018 charts have now ceased to be free. You can buy them in their entirety, but you do have to purchase them as a PDF file from Linens and Threads. The 2022 stitch along, which is free, is on the Fox and Rabbit website. So I will put a link to that one. Part 1 has been released. It came out on January 1st, and it's a series of borders. So there will be 12 releases, 1 per month. They will come out at the beginning of the month for a year-long stitch along. As we all know, I'm not good at a mystery stitch along, so I haven't downloaded anything yet because I will be monitoring that stitch along to see what I like. And certainly of the previous ones, so the 2019, I think it's the 2019, 2020, and the 2021 stitch alongs are still all available as free. I will put the links to that down below. If you want to get in on the 2022, that one has just started up, and the borders are part of that first release. Again, I've downloaded the other parts. It was one of my tasks for last week. I was sort of scrambling around after Christmas going, we're getting up to the end of the year, which downloads are disappearing and never to be seen again. So I was trying to make sure that I could get all of the ones that I thought were at risk of disappearing and making sure that I had them all. So again, when you come across a free chart, if it has any remote interest, take the chart. The Owl Forest embroidery, their Alice in Wonderland, has concluded. All of the parts have been released. It is still available for free on their website. And I was talking to someone and they said, yeah, I saw it, but I don't really like it. And they were like, I'm a little bit surprised. I wouldn't have thought that this chart was was a very you kind of chart. And I went, well, I don't know that the entire chart is me, but you just never know when you need some weird motif out of that thing, because it's got all the parts of Alice in Wonderland from the story in there, and you just never know where you may need some random motif. And so I, of course, have downloaded it, because you just never know. As pointed out in the previous video, the Jeannette Douglas one has just started up. The link to that will be in the notes below. It's a new year, so my encouragement for you is, oh yeah, here we go. So this is, I talked about that I had gotten a newsletter that had crafting resolutions, and I think it's great to set crafting resolutions. So resolutions about making time for it, which I feel like I've I'm doing a pretty good job about that. I've been fairly productive over the last couple of years about getting more stitching done, which has been great. Great, great, great. So that part's been great. It says, challenge yourself to do something new, something that's new to you. So I have several things built into my plan, either skills that I want to work on developing, as well as all of the specialty stitches in Sampler of Stitches. Some of those will be new to me, some of them will not be new, but you know, there's a I've got a series of 9 charts with a whole bunch of specialty stitches in it, so surely over the course of this there will be things in here that will be new to me. So I'll be learning new stitches, hopefully working on some new techniques to me. There might be some finishing challenges for myself as part of this, so I've certainly got goals in my 2022 stitching plan that are developing new skills for me. There's also, you know, things like teach somebody else part of your craft, and so I am working on setting some goals for myself about teaching what I know to other people that I know. We'll see how that goes. Stay tuned. Some of my efforts to date on getting some people to try cross stitching have, you know, they haven't worked out. They have not been persuaded, but you just never know. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's always good to aim to try to introduce somebody into a craft that brings a lot of pleasure to me. So I have certain goals on that. We'll see how we do. You just never know. Anyway, so there's all sorts of things. You know, they set things about, you know, organization goals, and so I've actually got a goal for myself on that one. So one of the risks is with my free the free downloads that I've got, or the electronic charts that I've got. Someone else was commenting that you buy them and they sort of end up in the digital abyss, where you don't know what you've got. So one of my goals over the course of this year is to periodically work on coming up with some pictures that I've printed out in a binder of the electronic charts that I have, so that I do keep them top of mind, going, these are other charts that you have, whether they're freebies or charts that I bought on Etsy, or, you know, like the Twin Peak Primitives ones. I'm also going to have to be careful because I'm going to be downloading the ones from the Punch Needle and Primitive Stitcher magazine. So I need to come up with a better way where I can keep them more top of mind as to the electronic charts that I have. So I have all sorts of stitching related goals, not just the physical stitching. So, you know, teach somebody new skills, organizing, all sorts of things. All of those are wrapped up into my goals. So my encouragement for you, as we end up wrapping up this particular video, is I hope that you set yourself some goals. And again, the goals, just like the stitching, are going to be unique to you. So I think it's beneficial to set goals. I know that there are entire camps out there where it's like, stitch whatever you want, whenever you want, because it brings you the joy and all that kind of stuff. And that's great, because, you know, but even within that, stitch what you want, when you want, you can still sort of set yourself some goals. And so my encouragement for you as we start off 2022 is set yourself some crafting goals and see how you do. Unlike work-related goals, these ones, there's really no dire consequences if you don't achieve all of your goals. And goals are always subject to change and, you know, tweaking or whatever. Like I say, I've set out a series of goals for 2022, and by January, I will have probably a much better understanding as to whether or not those goals need to be adjusted, revamped, totally revamped, redone, who knows, whatever. But I certainly have a series of goals that I set for myself. And with that, I hope everybody is having a great start to 2022. Like I say, where I am, we're starting it off with, you know, cold, and hopefully it's going to get back to more normal temperatures. But here's hoping for a happy, healthy, stitching productive 2022, and I look forward to seeing you next week, because one of my goals is, after my little gap, hopefully we're back to a more regular schedule and you will be seeing my regular Sunday floss tubes. Take care, guys.